Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to see everyone here joining us for this webinar about AI. It's probably not the first you're going to hear about. It's probably the next of a very long list. We are aware of that, and we want to make sure that you know that we're going to take a different turn on the AI discussion today. We're going to be discussing about the basis of it, going a little bit back to the roots, why we have AI and how long it's been there, what it's been helping the humankind do in the past decades and centuries, and then kind of understanding what technologies are going to be the best to solve certain problems in clinical supply chain and clinical operations. And so quickly about Insight, for those who don't know us, we are a software company that's been, we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We've been founded in the year 2000. And we've always been a company that's been 100% focused on applied mathematics, artificial intelligence, and deep analytics solutions. So at the beginning, we built on-demand software for the companies that needed them using these technologies. But we ended up focusing mostly on the life sciences industry and in the energy industry. So let me first introduce you to the team today. As I said, we're taking a little bit of a different turn on the AI discussion. So we've invited two of our most senior software engineers that are actually experts in AI. So welcome, FX and Justin, and I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. So I'm FX. I'm a principal software engineer here at Insight, and I have more than 10 years of experience delivering software and projects in the life science sector, and with always AI at its core.
Hello, I'm Justin. So I've been with Insight for 8 years. I'm a Gen AI software engineer. And I'm working on the adoption of AI in the company and preparing for a transition toward an AI-enabled future. I see a lot of familiar names in the audience, so hello everyone. It's really great to see you.
And I'm Emery. I'll bring the clinical supply chain, the clinical trials perspective to the discussion. My experience is that in the past 10 years, I've been working in the clinical trial industry, specifically in clinical supply chain. And about the agenda, as I teased already at the beginning, we're going to first discuss a little bit about the generative AI shift and kind of redefining what we mean by AI. Then we're going to zoom out a little bit and look at all the different kinds of technologies that exist in the world of AI and how they can be applied to clinical trials before summarizing our learnings and having a little bit of a Q&A sessions with you. So let's get started right away. We know that there's a big hype in Gen AI today. Why do we have this hype, and what's the origin of AI, basically? And I'll throw that question to Justin.
Yes, let's start with the big question. What is AI? There's no single definitive answer, and maybe that's a good thing, because AI is not one technique. It's actually a category of tools that help solve problems that we once thought only humans could tackle. From the invention of the wheel to the internet, we've always created tools, and AI is simply the next in line. It reflects our desire to amplify our abilities and to offload the complexity of our world toward these tools. So that's really what AI means. It's just something that is wonderful when it's invented, because it's something that only a human could do before.
Yeah.
We've had a very long history of different AI techniques then. Do you want to comment on them a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, I think this particular slide, this particular history is not really important. What is important to remember is that AI has been there for quite some time. I think many people think that this is like coming out of the ground with something that is very, very amazing. But we have been doing AI for quite some time. We have had a lot of applications, a lot of groundbreaking changes to the industries, and this is not the beginning. This is only the continuation of many different aspects. But of course, there is something that changed quite dramatically.
So as it's been there for such a long time, and we've had so many different AI technologies in the past century already, why do we have a hype today specifically with generative AI? Because it really feels like it's a lot bigger than the hypes we've had with past technologies.
Yeah, because we didn't really expect this to happen so soon. The thing that we cracked this time is a fundamental challenge, is the language itself. And language, it's really at the core of everything that we do. So it's a very important milestone. It's actually the series of information that is coherent over time. So it can be something like speech, like text, like images, and it can help us do everything from communication to reasoning, documentation. And it's really part of our DNA, what makes us human. So this means this Gen AI can be applied on a lot of things, and we are still at the beginning of the wave that of all the applications of Gen AI.
Yeah, what really justifies the hype is that language is in everything we do on a daily basis. That's how we communicate, that's how we store information, that's how we encode our processes, that's how we encode our regulation. All those things is about languages. And so this is kind of having applications in in a lot of different places. AI used to be about specific problems. Now it tackles something that is as large as language, and that is definitely changing the picture.
Yeah, it sounds like the previous techniques in AI were more mathematical, a bit less tangible for the wide population in the world, but language is very, very tangible for everyone.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And so just a quick question to the audience today, and we're going to ask you to use the chat to answer. We'd like to use that information to feed the discussion. What do you currently use AI for? Or if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see AI used for, feel free to write it in the chat. If you have any ideas, go ahead. And then we'll quickly comment on those in the discussion with FX and Justin. So once again, to open the chat on the top right of your screen, you've got a little arrow. So we've got here a couple of sentences. So writing documentation and redundant documentation. It's definitely a good application for sure. Using AI to quickly learn on a new topic. So yeah, self-education.
IMP forecasting, so different kind of AI here. Interesting to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, developing is definitely a domain that is clearly changing. I can tell you that.
Yeah, coding, automation, prototyping.
Yeah, I see summarizing wikis and get access to knowledge bases. This access to content, to the context of something, that's going to be a very important aspect of Gen AI.
Yeah, and one thing that is interesting from the chat is that we see mainly applications of Gen AI here. We have one thing about AI tools for IMP forecasting, but most of it's about application of Gen AI, and this clearly highlights this hype and this change, this shift into making this very common for everyday use.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, protocol interpretation of content, of documentation. There's a lot of really good things, and it kind of brings us to the next part of the presentation as well, right? Because AI today is still a software. It's still something that we need to select, implement, make sure that the people adopt. And well, very unfortunately, in the past years, a lot of experts have done a lot of analysis on software implementation and the success of these software implementations. And PwC has this absolutely amazing KPI. 83% of technology that was implemented, in this case, it was in supply chain, haven't fully delivered the expected results, either because, well, it wasn't the right technology for the right problem, or it wasn't correctly adopted or not correctly implemented. There's a lot of reasons that can lead to failure. And I think today we're going to mainly focus on using the right technology for the right problem, kind of, opening a little bit this box that is AI and trying to understand what's in it and how we can use it in the best way.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to zoom out a little bit, and we're going to start by a quick poll question, the first poll question of the presentation today. So let's say you have a problem you want to do, you want to forecast patient recruitment in a clinical trial without an S. Sorry about that. Which technique would you use to do that? Would you use a machine learning technique, generative AI, optimization, or simulations? Let's see a bit what comes out. Well, machine learning is in the lead. Simulations is now in the lead, actually.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's interesting indeed.
Gen AI as well.
I think we're expecting machine learning to come on top. It's interesting because the simulations are actually coming on top. So what we can say here is that both have their applications for sure, but machine learning, you would typically use it when you have a problem that you cannot really explain the structure, so you're not able to open a black box, and you have a lot of data for it. So if you have a lot of data for your recruitments, for past recruitments, for recruitments of similar clinical trials with similar therapy, then machine learning will probably be the best guess. If you understand very well the process and how it works, then simulations might be a nice idea. But I think we can move to the next content in order to understand a bit more the different techniques and the difference between them. So when we say machine learning, I think the word is a bit tricky because when us humans learn, most of the time we are reading a book, we are trying to understand, going through a course, and trying to understand deeply the subject and the matter that we are learning about. And that's actually not at all how AI learns. AI learns in the same way that we learn every small thing in lives, how we learn our gut feelings. So I think more than learning, machine learning is really about developing an intuition about something, developing a gut feeling. Interesting applications that you can see is definitely about estimating something that is, again, more or less a black box. So how does recruitment work? There is a lot of different factors, a lot of different context that is being packed into that. But it's hard to say how a given theoretical area will have an impact on how fast you will be able to recruit or in which regions and so on. It's not so, the correlation, it's not so easy to make. And a good example of application in our daily life, or it's something that was very famous at some point, is AlphaZero in chess, and it's the ability for an AI to see a board of chess and to be able to estimate the position, the quality of the position. And this is something that is applicable every time you see something and are able to guess, to have an intuition about, is it a good thing, is it not? What would be the next value? Those are the kind of application where machine learnings are typically very applicable.
This is only applicable if you have a lot of example to see. You cannot really give it the rules and expect it to predict something without having this intuition.
No, so the bigger the problem, the more data you will need to have. That's relatively always the same with AI. If the problem that you try to predict is relatively simple, you can go with a few samples. But if you need to tackle very complex things, and recruitment is not an easy process to understand how it works and why you would have more patients coming in or less, you will need a lot of data. You'll need quality in your data too.
Yes, and another problem, if you use machine learning to predict your data, even if your machine learning algorithm is very well performing, it will never tell you why this special site has less recruitment than another, or why this country recruits more. It will never give you the rules. You cannot really explain its decision.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying gut feeling. It's not really explaining you why this country will recruit faster. It's telling you a few hints, but most models are very hard to interpret and to open. They are mostly black box, and you have to accept that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of machine learning technologies globally. If we summarize its capability, it's to learn patterns from the past data and use it to make decisions today. So of course, in clinical trials specifically, we mentioned recruitment forecasts. So it could give us an idea based on past clinical trials and similar indications of the recruitment rate that happened, maybe even per country or even maybe per site. For that indication, it could help also classify certain sites based on their performance and past performance. But recruitment is not the only thing that we could use machine learning for. We're definitely using that to gather retention data, so patient, attrition or dropping out of the trial, screening failures. We could also use that to predict temperature excursions. So we could use machine learning to understand if there are any regional or site-specific events that are actually creating temperature excursions in a more frequent way, or is it basically vendor related? So we could try to find these trends through machine learning.
Yeah, the amazing thing with machine learning is since it's made to tackle black boxes, if you have data about something, if you have data about a question, whether it is classification or it is prediction, you can use machine learning. Okay, the real key thing is you need data, and you need enough data to be able to detect those patterns. But there are a lot of application, and the key thing, and I think a lot of pharma companies are really up to date with that, is to centralize your data in a given place, to try to start cleaning it up and identify opportunities. That's a job to do.
Makes sense. So it can basically support, well, avoid the guesswork that we have to do a lot when we have uncertain data. It can reduce human error for sure, and kind of accelerate certain decision making too.
Yeah, and it really shines when it's combined with other methods. I was citing the example of AlphaZero, but it's important to know that when you're doing that, it's actually not used straightforward as a tool to guess the next move. It's actually used as a way to see in the future, a few steps ahead, like if you would play in chess yourself, and to estimate the value, the quality of a position that you could reach. And that's exactly the same in applications that you could have around AI. Is you're going to try to use your prediction model in order to take a few steps ahead, see what would be the most impactful decision.
Makes sense. And then you said it works really well in combination with other technologies, which is a very good segue to the next part of the presentation. So we do have another poll here for the audience. If you had to understand the implications of a protocol design on your budgets and resources, so we could be talking about your entire clinical trial budgets and how you're going to resource it, so how many FTEs you need to do certain activities in the next 5 years of the clinical trial. Are you going to have variability in that resourcing requirement? When are you going to have budget requirements at peak at certain points? What kind of technology would you use to do that? So yeah, simulations in the lead. You've got a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of Gen AI, but simulation is still on top.
Yeah, I think simulation is clearly winning now. As opposed to the first questions, where we had quite a surprise, here there is a clear winner with simulations. And I mean, here, again, as I said, if the problem is a black box and you cannot open it, then machine learning is applicable if you have a lot of data. But if you can understand, if you can describe the problem, if you can model it, if you can explain what are the different actors, what are the different moving parts and how they interact with one another, but that you have a very complex problem, then simulations are really going to help you a lot. And simulation, if we would do the human parallel, you know, what you do, it's truly knowing the future, it's predicting the future, seeing a few steps ahead. We have plenty of fiction around this idea that you can see in the future and then assess if your decision is the right one or not. So you take a decision, you see in the future if it's happening, if it's going to lead to good results or not. And that's actually exactly the power and the capability of simulation. And it excels in what-if scenarios. So you want to test a decision, you can input it, and then you can run a lot of simulation. You can throw the dice a lot of times, and then see how your system behaves, and not just an average, because a lot of people think that average is enough, okay? But actually, often it's you want to cope, you want to be able to deal with the corner case, with the rare events, and that's particularly the case in the clinical trial industry, I think, because you care about the risk. You know, you don't want to miss any patient demand, so you really want to take all the different options into consideration and be as robust as possible. And that's a key, I think, a key ingredient or a key quality of simulations is the robustness that it brings to your decisions.
And so I found it really, really inspiring to think about, you know, how amazing it would be if we could always know the impact of every decision that we make today, whether I go right or left. What's going to happen if I do that? Well, we have the GPS to do that right now, but in clinical trials, it means it opens a lot of opportunities. It's quite impressive, actually. You know, the thing that we do at NSA is just simulating the entire clinical trial to end its supply chain. So it means that every single patient that will be recruited in the trial is actually being recruited virtually in that simulation, that every shipment that is being shipped is actually happening virtually in the simulation. So the trial is happening virtually in the system, which in itself opens unlimited opportunities. You could use that to forecast and simulate every single inventory across the world. You could use that to understand how many shipments you're going to need, which means that you might have a need of certain amounts of resources in your depots to do the packaging, the labeling, and the distribution of those drugs. So you can do resourcing, you can do budgeting. And we also use it to predict risks, right? If you add a constraint to your model, because the fun thing when you have the version of a clinical trials, you can play around with it. You can change the protocol, you can change a little bit the lead times, you can change the country list, you can change anything you want, and it will show exactly how it will impact a lot of KPIs. Some of these KPIs are going to be risks of shortage, for example. If we're talking about clinical operations, it could be risks of having recruitment delays, for example. If you have certain inclusion-exclusion criteria in your protocol, you could simulate how that would impact recruitment and understand what's the range within which the trial would end. So it's, to me, it's just fascinating to have that opportunity of kind of doing proof of concepts, testing ideas without actually having to have the trial run.
Yeah.
Definitely, this is the dream tool to predict the future. And actually, if you predict the future, you are kind of invincible in your decisions. But there will always be limits with the kind of tool. You can really make a complete clone of reality.
You can assess all the different decisions that you need to do, and that's of course it gives you a very nice tool. It gives you an opportunity to see in the future, but we know that sometimes you have so many decisions to take that you cannot test them all, and even worse, you cannot test the combination of them all. And that leads us to other kind of techniques that are very valuable too, coming from AI.
Yeah, simulation force you to explore random paths, random scenarios. You can explore very diverse, but you cannot explore every single path, or it would take millions of years of computation with the current technologies.
Yeah, that's one of the issues too with simulations. It requires a lot of computing power. If you want to explore, to be robust, the more computing power you put into it, the more robust your decisions will be, or the more robust the forecast will be. And you also need to be able to model every single detail. And it's not always easy to open a black box, and that's for sure. I mean, we said machine learning is really has a lot of added value in plenty of situations, because opening the black box is hard, and you don't know how those things behave. So you cannot simulate them. If you don't understand it, you cannot simulate them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier again that machine learning works really well in combination with other technologies. And we could see that in the first poll as well, that for patient recruitment, people were really hesitating between simulation and machine learning. Actually, machine learning could feed a simulation tool.
Yeah, I mean, and could feed a lot of AI tools. And I think we're going to talk a lot about this, all the combinations of techniques that we can have. But yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the elements in your systems might be difficult to model, okay? And so you can use machine learning to actually simulate those small problems. So you could have difficulties to know how a given actor in your clinical supply chain is going to behave, and so you will try to mimic this using a machine learning model. That's also you don't know really how to express how patients will arrive to the sites, and that's a recruitment process, and so you can feed in a model to predict those patients' arrivals, those kind of things. Yeah, the combination is really where AI shines, and I think that's how us human works too. We try to find the best tools for each job, and that's definitely the case through, and we'll see that later on with Gen AI.
Makes sense. And so with simulations, if you wanted to use that to make a decision, you can of course test scenarios. But if you have 1,000, 1,000,000 different options in your decisions, then it would mean that you need to run a lot of different models. There might be a better technique for that. And it kind of brings us to the next poll. What if you had to find the perfect combination of timelines and clinical trial designs in order to start as many clinical trials as possible within a limited budget? So the CSO of a pharma company, you have to define your pipeline. Basically, you have to make sure that you can start as many trials as fast as possible. What technology would you use to do that? Same options as before: ML, Gen AI, optimization, or simulations. I think the answer seems to be quite obvious for the attendees. We've got a lot of optimization, some Gen AI, simulations as well. And I think I just teased a little bit the reason why simulation might not be the best option. It's an option. You can definitely use simulation, but you probably will spend a lot of time testing all possible options and scenarios, and you might not always find the best possible answer, right?
Exactly. And to give maybe a bit more context on why simulations might be hard, we can take another problem that appears to be simple to everybody, and it's when you are going to travel and you need to pack your luggage, and you can put many things into that. Your wife is coming with her stuff. Your kids are pushing for you to take all the toys that they have, all the books that they have, and you might think this is a simple problem, but you're working with constraints. Okay, you're working the fact that your luggage needs to fit in the plane. You need to pass the security, so it needs to come up with a given weight and so on. And actually, the combination just with that simple problem, if you have hundreds of objects and you want to decide if you put them or not for each of them, that's a quite complex problem. And the space, we speak about space when we speak about optimization problems. The space that you need to search of solution is huge. And for most industrial optimization problem, we are speaking about a space that is larger than the number of stars in the universe. You know, it's incredibly large. The possibilities are huge. And so going through that space is impossible, except if you understand a bit how the space is structured. And that's exactly what optimization is about being able to, again, open the black box. You have to understand deeply how the problem that you try to solve is structured, and then you can apply some mathematical techniques to guide you through search in that space. And so we give the funny example of packing your suitcase, but that's definitely the case when you need to, for example, schedule a set of tasks with shared resources. And so typically that would be for the clinical trial industry when you are trying to plan your manufacturing, to plan your productions and those kind of things.
When you use optimization to solve a problem, it will always come down to what you value in that problem. In your suitcase, do you want to have the most number of items, or the ones that are the most valuable, or the most that are the ones that are the most essential to your holidays? You have different metrics, and that will guide your search, your heuristic in that space of possibilities that is completely huge.
Yeah, when you want to schedule your trials for a portfolio, what do you prioritize? How do you define that you have the optimal solution? That's critical for optimization. You need to be really able to understand and to express what is your objective functions and what are the constraints that you have. Like, for example, if you think your production schedule is going to be a constraint, your capabilities, then you need to be able to express those, and you need also to be able to see what a given trial will consume in terms of resources. And that's where, again, and we come back to this idea that many methods are working one with another in order to produce a very qualitative results. You need to be able to understand what is going to be the demand of a given trial in order to be able to schedule it in a larger picture as a whole.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So go ahead.
Unfortunately, most scenarios in life are a bit complex, and you rarely have only one metric to optimize. The most of the time you will have multiple things, risk and waste, or the perfect solution will always be a trade-off between multiple KPIs. And so you need to find that right balance. And yeah, that's where optimization. Right.
If we take our earlier example on the suitcase, on the budgets and optimizing the amount of clinical trials that we can do with that budget, if the budget is the suitcase, you want to be able to put as many clinical trials as you want in that suitcase. Now, is your objective to to do the trials that will bring the most revenue when they're commercialized, or is it to do the trials that have the highest chance of success? You're the one who needs to choose what's your priority when you start an optimization problem. But then you can also do constraints, and you could say, okay, the objective is to take all the trials that we believe are the most feasible and the highest success, but we want to have a minimum revenue commercialization of X, for example. You can put constraints in it. In clinical supply chain, an optimization problem would be, for example, to minimize the costs and drug waste, for example, of the clinical trial supply chain under the constraint of always delivering drug to every single patient and not missing a single dose. That is the constraint that you're putting to the problem. There's so many applications as well in clinical trials, like whenever you have planning, you have to plan your depot shipments, when you have to do a resource allocation, or even manufacturing for an entire portfolio. You might have limited resources in manufacturing, limited factories, limited bioreactors, and you have an entire portfolio of clinical trials. Well, you first need to forecast the demand of all of those trials, aggregate them per program, but then you can start optimizing the allocation of your manufacturing resources to the batches that will supply those programs. That's a very typical optimization problem.
Yeah. And so you have optimization problems at a very high level. Here we're talking portfolio level, but you can also have optimization problems at the level of a trial, at the level of an inventory, where you have some capacity, some resources, and you cannot really handle all the shipments at the same time. So you need to schedule them, and sometimes you have constraints. So those are the kind of problems that are where optimization is really applicable. The downside to optimization is that not all problems are feasible. So we said about this huge space, and it's true that some problems are well fitted to be solved by optimization because we have some techniques in order to cut through that space and to find the right set of decisions. But simply exploring the space is not possible all the time, and so you need to understand how to structure your problem, and that's kind of an art sometimes to be able to structure your problem in the right way.
Sure. Makes sense. Yeah, there's a discussion I had at some point with someone in our space, and he wanted a tool, as you mentioned, that it could be used on a trial basis. He wanted a tool to optimize kit design. They wanted to make sure that we could optimize the design of the kit and the package to minimize the space that it takes in the inventories and the shipment, while at the same time being able to contain as much of the medication as possible and match the content to the visit schedule of the clinical trial and the different possibilities of titrations and dosing of the patients. It's somewhat an extremely complex problem for something that is so small as a kit that we're going to give to a patient at some point.
That's a very nice use case. That's a very nice use case. And I think there are plenty of situations where you could have a lot of gain just by optimizing your basic solution a bit further. And that could be for many, many, many different kinds of problems. That's a nice example.
And so as we are advancing quite quickly on the time, let's maybe move to the last portion. I think the answer to this question is going to be very, very clear to everyone. So if you had to write a protocol from scratch for a specific indication, what AI technology would you use between ML, Gen AI, optimization, and simulation? I don't think we need to wait for the answers. It's already getting very clear.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Gen AI arrives and is useful for this type of problems where you want to produce documentation, write the protocol about a specific indication. You need to explain it, what the indication is, and then show it examples, give it context, and then this Gen AI is able to interpret every information and transform it into the desired output. I think this is a different kind of AI that is really closer to what a human is doing in the day-to-day compared to the other techniques. I don't think it's meant to be used in the same way as the three techniques that we found previously, that we described previously. If I come back a bit about machine learning, so one of the big downside of machine learning is that you need data. And here, Gen AI can actually be combined with machine learning to gather this data, produce this data from documents, and getting metrics from different ways and sources. Regarding the simulations, one of the difficult aspects of simulations is to have the rules clearly set up and to maintain them when things change, when there's a new country appearing on the map or something like that. This is very hard to maintain, and a Gen AI can understand the world and transform it into rules for a simulation. And regarding optimization, again, regarding the metrics, actually, a metrics, it's very close to what you will use as a prompt to an agent using these optimization tools and inventing this heuristic that you need to implement.
The key elements here is that Gen AI today, as it's tackling such a large problem as language, it's able to solve a lot of different problems and at a very high level. Okay. Since we use language to reason ourselves, I mean, I'm personally someone that likes to speak out loud when I'm trying to tackle a problem. And this is exactly what we do. We try to incorporate, to use language in order to formulate our reasoning. And Gen AI, by learning language, is also able to simulate reasoning on the problems. And the nice thing now that you can have with Gen AI is that it's actually able to use tools. And so, again, we come back to this idea that all techniques need to be fitting with one another, okay? And so I think someone answer to that specific answer, write a protocol for a specific indication. And we said everybody's answered Gen AI, and that's actually not true. We had an answer that was machine learning. So Gen AI is a part of machine learning, but I don't think that was the point. Actually, machine learning is used to assess, to give an estimation about if a document has certain properties, for example. That's something that you can use. And so if you give Gen AI, you put Gen AI in a loop with something that is able to evaluate some properties of a document, you can have them iterate on that and actually go much further in terms of quality for the document that it is generating. And this is where it shines. It's able to use other tools and then to ingest it as we human are doing. We are not doing everything by hands. We are also using tools to do so.
Yeah. So Gen AI has a lot of opportunities in content generation and understanding the context of certain documentation. Like we said, writing protocols, maybe automating the filing of regulatory submissions or import licenses that always need to be submitted in very, very specific format that comes from a lot of databases that might not be as structured. So AI can kind of automate that filling or identify inefficiencies in certain protocols, but also in ongoing trials, it could analyze your real-time data and understand before you were even able to do it by yourself, any potential discrepancies or deviations that might happen in the future. It actually acts somehow as an advisor as well, right? If you're in a certain situation, let's say you have a drug shortage, it could advise you on solutions that could solve that shortage. It's not going to be able to show you the impact of those solutions. You would need simulations, for example, to simulate the impact of the solutions, but it's a great advisor. And it kind of makes the other technologies we mentioned before more accessible to everyone else, right? Because it helps fill in the data to build the models of the other technologies like simulation and optimization, and might even in the future kind of automate their usage as well.
Yeah, if you give him the right context. Okay, so if you give to Gen AI the right context, so we are saying, for example, it can give you expert information if it has it. Okay, and so that's also, it's again, for Gen AI, you need to provide the right tools for him to be able to make some guess and to compute some things that are a bit harder than just language itself. And then you can also give him context. So you can give him knowledge base about how a protocol should look like, and what are good examples of protocol, what are things that are typically generating some issues. And so those are the things that you can really do. It's inject context, inject tools.
Yeah. So it definitely does not replace any tool like simulation and optimization or machine learning that really deals with mathematics and numbers. That's something that Gen AI can never do, but it can interact with those systems.
Yeah, exactly. Gen AI is really the ecosystem. It's not meant to replace machine learning. It will never be better than machine learning to get an intuition. It will never be better than simulation to predict the future. It will definitely not be better than optimization to find the right solution. So this Gen AI is meant to be used as an ecosystem where these other techniques are used as a tools by the Gen AI or by the user. Personally, I think that there are multiple levels where you can apply Gen AI, and I think that's what's happening currently in the industry. So you have the basic usage. Everybody has tried ChatGPT. You can use it for personal use, for personal project, to train yourself on something, to ask questions. It really works well that way. But then a step further, you can automate some steps of your processes and have these capabilities used as decisions or context extraction, summarizations. You can automate some steps with chain of prompts like that. And the step even higher would be to have autonomous agents that are not controlled by a prompt, but by a goal that you give them. And you let them autonomously use your tools, your simulation tools, and you arrive at work and overnight it runs some simulations to tackle a problem that happened yesterday evening. Things like that will be coming quite soon and will make the future very interesting. But if you are able to model your problem as a language, then Gen AI arrives also as a technique that really is interesting to look at. For example, the chemical language of protein folding has been modeled by Google with the AlphaFold 3, and that I'm sure you know of it. It will unlock very great possibilities and potential for drug discovery and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because when we say language, we imagine English, French. We imagine a language that you speak and that we use to communicate. But actually, languages are just a structured way of representing a given world. And so, chemistry, biology, all have some sort of could be represented using a language, and then applying a large language model to those. And you have tremendous results, and that's exactly what you said with AlphaFold.
So we might see a very, very strong acceleration in research, like a lot more molecules that are either discarded very quickly or sent into research very quickly too.
Yeah, in any field of research, in every field of science, actually, we are seeing huge progress. Even if the Gen AI is only used as a tool to summarize papers, actually, these scientists are saving time on a lot of things and going faster on everything.
Yeah, someone was saying online, I use it to learn things, and that's exactly that. I mean, you can learn new things tomorrow. You can try new tasks. This is really amazing.
Yeah, indeed, and of course, I mean, I see we're coming to an end for the webinar today, so. Just want to highlight the very, very obvious point is that there is a very, very long list of AI technologies that exist. We've only scratched the surface today with some of the biggest ones with simulation, machine learning, Gen AI, and optimization. There's a lot more to talk about. So if you're interested in discussing some of these other technologies or you have questions about them, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a conversation or even a follow-up webinar on those. And also wanted to let you know if any of the ideas that we mentioned today of applications of these technologies get you excited, or if you have other ideas by yourself that you believe could be really, really impactful, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. As I said at the beginning, Enside is a software development company. We've been versed in AI technology for 25 years now. And we'd be very much excited to discuss these concepts with you guys. So any ideas are welcome. Any open discussions are open. And the idea really is to make sure that all the great ideas get developed at some point and that can be used to revolutionize our industry. So before having, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes for a Q&A, guys, you want to quickly summarize the main take-home messages, what you want the audience to bring back home?
Yeah, if I have a take-home messages that I really want to share today is that the future is exciting, but it takes a bit of time to get used to it. So I would say it's a really good idea to attend this kind of webinars, keep you informed, keep you in the loop, because things are moving very fast, and there's a lot of new stuff to learn and to test also. So stay curious, try out new things, stay open to new tools that are arriving, and try to use them to learn how to have them optimize your life and give you the best.
Yeah, try new things, play with new concepts. That's definitely something that is way more accessible today than it used to be. And I will give you a few take-home message more from the artificial intelligence point of view. General one is it's not because you have a tool that looks like it can solve everything that it's the right tool. Okay, and I think that's valid in any situation. It's particularly valid for artificial intelligence. You need to start with a problem and find the right technology to solve it, or the right set of technology. We said it a lot, we showed it a lot. It's like about combining the right tools in order to give you the best value. And GenAI has tremendous qualities, but it's also prone to make mistakes, hallucinations, and that's more and more the case when the task is complex. So give it the right tools, play with it, play with other type of tools. And yeah, combining them, that's the best way to get results. I think we have quite a few interesting questions. So
yeah, for sure. And indeed, a lot of the conclusions in the technologies we saw today was that combining them makes the best results. And indeed, so let's have some minutes for a Q&A. Don't hesitate to write your questions in the chat. We're going to go through them. There's a couple that were already asked throughout the presentation. There's one here from Massier that is about the black box. So FX and Justin, you both mentioned the fact that machine learning and optimization were somehow black box technologies. And Massier here is asking if we can give a quick example of a black box.
Yeah, that's kind of a technical term, but basically a black box means that you cannot see inside the box how it's working. Okay, so if you have a system, if you have a concept that is too hard for you to grasp, that's a black box. Okay, you don't know how the cogs are working together. So recruitment process, for example, it's what is influencing the arrival of patients at site, what is influencing they are recruited in your trials. There's a lot of factors, but it's hard to explain how those factors are really influencing the final outcome, that is the patient is coming at the site. So this is really what we call the black box. It's hard to explain how it's working, while otherwise it would be something where you can really explain that if this is happening, this is the conclusion.
That is something that is a bit counterintuitive compared to what we learn at school when you have mathematics. We explain you why this type of formula works and everything. Here, the technology that is behind AI could be, for example, there are many different algorithms, but if we take neural networks as an example, it's simply neurons that are mimicking a bit what the brains looks like. And the information go through these neurons, and somehow, sometimes you get the right answer, and you can optimize for that. And so we don't really know how it works behind the scene, but and there's no explainability on it. But that's why we call it a black box. It just works.
And that's the same for our own brain. I mean, how do you know why you made a given choice? You can explain yourself, but you're never really sure what triggered the change and what triggered the decision.